Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Hi, everyone. Today I'm speaking with Heather Turgeon and Julie Wright, who are sleep consultants, psychotherapists, moms, and the authors of the top-selling books, The Happy Sleeper, and now Generation Sleepless, which is all about teens and sleep and, how much sleep do teens need? And is sleep your secret health weapon? And why does sleep loss matter when it comes to our teens? All that and more. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hi, Heather. Hi, Julie. It's good to see you both.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for having us.
Hi.
I'm super excited about this. So I saw your book. I think I saw a review of it in a magazine or something. And I was like, oh, Generation Sleepless. I thought it was for me. Like I thought, this is a book that was written for me. This is perfect. And then I saw, why tweens and teens aren't sleeping enough and how we can help them. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need this book. And once I started reading it, I knew I had to speak to the both of you because this is like a fantastic source of information for everybody, really. It's not just for teens sleeping.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. We're so glad.
So why do teens need... It seems like they need more sleep. Like, hasn't that always been the myth? Oh, you know what it was like to be a teen. You slept forever. Like, do they need more sleep than the average person?
They actually do need more sleep than most parents, especially of today's generation, understand. I think teens today, as we're going to unpack as we talk, have a lot more that impinges on their schedules than certainly I did when I was a teen. So today's teens, even though we know that they're capable of sleeping a really long time when we let them, today's teens are the most underslept. They're the most sleep-deprived population in human history. But, and this is getting to your question, they actually need a lot of sleep. Their sort of ideal amount of sleep that they need is 9.25 hours. Adequate is defined as 8. Most teens by high school years are getting an average of about 6 hours. And one of the reasons, there are many reasons, but one of the main reasons is that their brains are going through kind of like a second toddlerhood of brain development. It's sort of the phase 2 of all that refining and pruning and restructuring and remodeling of the brain that we know so much about during those 0 to 3 years and how important they are. Well, this is the final stage and it's crucial. It's critical to their future health, their future mental health, their current health and mental health. And all of this, most of this work in the brain happens when they're sleeping. So that is why most of the parents we work with are shocked to hear the 9.25 as ideal and the 8 as adequate.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it feels like if you let your teen sleep, on the weekend or something, it's not a school morning, they can sleep till 1 p.m. sometimes. Now, that can be looked at as lazy by some people. Is it lazy?
It's not lazy. It's definitely their brains trying desperately to make up for the sleep that the loss of sleep that they've accumulated all week long. If they're losing 2 or 3 hours of sleep every night during the week, then they've built up, 10, 15 hours of sleep debt. And on the weekends, most will try to sleep in and most will, feel better if they sleep for 12 hours. We work with a lot of teens that could easily sleep for 12 hours straight. The problem is that if they do that on the weekends, it feels good in the short term and it really impacts the beginning of their week. In the long term, they lose more sleep if they do that. So they're shifting back and forth between schedules and we typically recommend that they only sleep an hour or two more on the weekends to try to fill up a little bit on sleep, but not go so far off their schedule. Because as we talk about in the book, when you're basically confusing your brain, it's called social jet lag, to go back and forth between those extreme schedules. So your brain becomes pretty confused and it feels like jet lag. And it also leads to then Sunday night, they feel even like they really can't fall asleep and then they lose more sleep that week. So it's kind of a perpetuating cycle.
Right. Okay. That makes sense, right? But maybe convincing them is not not as easy. Mm-hmm. So, Julie, when I'm thinking about, teens and sleep and remembering the baby years, right? And I remember somebody told me that you need to train your baby to sleep. You need to train your baby how to, self-soothe back to sleep if they wake up in the middle of the night. Is sleep a learned behavior?
It's such a great question. We love this question because we are just, one of the things we say over and over is you can't train anybody to fall asleep. Sleep is, we're born with the sleep ability to fall asleep, and we're born with our circadian systems, which mature by around 5-6 months, and we're born with the sleep function. So it's like saying you could train a baby to learn to crawl, or even train a person to swallow or breathe. Sleep is a natural ability. It's primitive, it's hardwired, and it's really applicable when we talk about baby and toddler sleep because parents, they feel like they have to come in from the outside and train their baby to do something that's really hard. And the opposite is true. They don't have to train and it's not hard. We just have to get them out of the way. Teens, there's a similar philosophy, except the parents aren't like rocking or feeding them to sleep, but the teens are often doing things at the moment that they should be falling asleep that interfere with that natural process. The body really wants to sleep. So there are lots of things going on in teenagers' lives that extend bedtime later and later. And the longer they stay up past that sort of optimal time, the less rational their brains become. So their ability to make a good decision, a better decision to go to bed declines the longer they stay up. So yeah, we don't use the word train. We can train ourselves to follow timing. We can train ourselves to follow good routines. We can train ourselves to create what we call the sleep bubble, which is a protective sort of it's just sort of a concept where we protect our sleep. So we can train ourselves to change our habits, but we can't train ourselves to fall asleep. And if you think about, one of my favorite things to think about is that moment of falling asleep. What is it? What happens? Are we even aware of it? We don't know. You can't train somebody to do that. You just have to create the environment, the timing, the circumstances, the mindset, the ability to let go, the lack of stimulation. You have to create that. And those things you can train yourself to do.
It's interesting because, when I think about sleep and how we talk about it, Heather, and how we, it's kind of like this idea in this busy culture that we have that, sleep is a waste of time. Like I can sleep when I'm dead. I can sleep later. I don't have to sleep right now. It's no big deal. Like, don't worry about it. You just got to power through. Is that, are we setting ourselves up by talking that way as adults and our kids hearing us maybe? Are we setting our kids up for them to believe the same sort of myths that we believe?
I definitely think we are. I think that our society, we in the book, we describe it as a sleep comes last mentality. So it's like you're saying, sleep is basically what's left over at the end of the day when all the other things are done and complete. And in our modern world with technology, with, busy workloads, with school, already that's a really, we're skimping on sleep for that reason, because we can pack so much into our days. Everything's available. Everybody's online and there's so much to do and see and so much artificial light. So already the deck is stacked against us in our modern world, and really sleep does come last. But it's even more accentuated for high schoolers and teenagers in general because of the workload that they have, their high school, and especially I think it kind of depends by country and by school. And there's some schools that are just, piling on 3, 4, 5 hours of homework every night. So it really kind of depends on the family and on the school. But I think especially teenagers are given that message that everything else is more important than sleep. Their academic achievement is more important, their futures, their sports, they've got so much on their plate that societal sleep comes last mentality is accentuated for them, because we just feel like, just pile it all on because your future, because you have to get ahead. And the opposite is actually true, because we can talk about what goes on in the brain during sleep, but we're setting our kids up for success in life and achievement and happiness, well-being, academic achievement, career achievement by protecting their sleep. So it's completely counterproductive.
Yeah, and we don't want to blame parents or point the finger at parents or say that parents can solve this completely on their own, because they're fighting an uphill battle. Your kid comes home with all that homework. Your kid is working to, fill out their college applications. And at least in our country, in order to look good, it entails a lot of activities and things. School start times are not sleep friendly. So we don't want to say to parents, we absolutely agree that having a positive sleep is important. Sleep is a priority attitude, but we're also saying to parents, we get how hard this is. It's almost impossible in the system that we live to put sleep first. And that's why we wrote the book, because we're therapists and we can help with sleep. But we thought, we can't help people in this simple way anymore with this teenager issue. We need to call out to society, to schools, to colleges, to tech, big tech companies for responsible design, and have society look at this issue. And the kind of great thing, but the kind of sad thing that it's gotten this far is that it's fixable. All these things are fixable. These are not the kinds of problems that we worry about at night, like climate change or all these, I could go on and on, but this is a fixable issue. So we really want parents to know that we understand how hard this is. And we really are calling out to society and to parents, because we can help. We can help in the home immediately, but we can't solve the whole issue.
Yeah, and it's such a good point, because when I was reading about how some high schools, kids have to be there and in class, depending where you live, like at 7 a.m. I never really thought about that before, because I think we have this belief that, sleep is just what you do. You just get up early and start the day. But to go in and learn something at 7 a.m., I don't think I could do that. Like, that would be very difficult. So if we're sending teens who need all this sleep to be healthy and learn properly, to learn at 7 a.m., that is a society problem. That is, those are policies and things that need to change that, you're right, parents don't have control over, but we can help and maybe help change things so they do support our kids.
Yeah. And they're actually, as Julie said, very fixable. So in that example that you're giving, we have a list of just very practical steps for schools. They are not difficult changes to make, and they're super powerful. And it's very granular. Like, we're extremely, practical, and we want to just be able to we have a list for technology companies, a list for schools. We have habits for parents. And so, for example, schools, one of the things we say is, of course, moving start time to 8:30 or later, and minimizing homework. But then also, we don't want schools to have strenuous, academic, don't have a kid take a calculus test at 8 o'clock in the morning. Their brains, and studies have shown this, their brains function optimally by about 10 in the morning. So do PE, do physical education, have them, do art in the morning, and then move into those rigorous classes. Even just delaying that by 1 hour means their brains are actually primed to do that critical thinking. So, there are just steps that schools can take right away that make a big difference.
And the two of you aren't making this up. Like, there's research in here. Like, it's not like the two of you got together and thought, well, I don't know, they should just change the time to this and that would fix it. That you have research to support what's in this book that shows us, we know what would work best, right?
Oh, absolutely. A team, an international, group of sleep scientists agree and are hoping to promote this idea of moving school start times later and helping teenagers go to bed a little bit earlier at night. And another reason that we didn't talk about yet is teens have a natural shift in their biological clock. We used to think they're just rebellious and just didn't want to go to bed. But the truth is, they don't get sleepy until about 2 hours later than the rest of us. And of course, that means that their bodies need to sleep 2 hours later in the morning. And this is biological. This is hormonal and this is biological. And it's, we don't really even know why it happens, but it's a real thing. So there's a lot of sleep scientists, there's a lot of sleep science that supports this idea of really looking at what an optimal school schedule, what an optimal day schedule. We want teens to not only not have so much homework or so much pressure, unreasonable pressure for college applications, but we want them to have time to be outside and time to hang out and time to just do nothing. You know, there's so much that links to mental health in not only getting enough sleep, but just having more balance in their lives.
I know there's so much I have so many more questions for you, but before we get to those, on this show, we like to thank our guests for spending their time with us. And so we asked our guests to choose a Canadian nonprofit organization that we give $500 to in your name. And you chose Watari, which offers counseling and support services to high-risk street-involved youth and communities in Vancouver. So thank you for choosing them, and we will give them $500 on your behalf. So thank you.
Fantastic.
So what about, so I want to talk about what happens to our brain when we sleep, but before we get into that, or what happens to a teen's brain, because I know it's a different experience for them. So what about, well, maybe let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about the sleep. What happens to a teen's brain while they are sleeping their hopefully 9 to 10 hours?
How many hours do we have to talk about this? There's so much while they're sleeping. It's amazing. And I think one of the reasons that this is such a fascinating topic, and one of the answers to why we don't appreciate what goes on when we sleep, is because we don't experience it. We don't experience sleep. We don't have a conscious experience of what happens when we fall asleep. We may remember our dreams and we know how we feel when we wake up. But when you fall asleep, the myth about sleep is that it's rest, and sleep is not rest. Sleep is like, I think of it like, you know, that movie Night at the Museum, when Ben Stiller is the night watchman at the museum, and everyone's like, oh, it's just asleep, like the whole museum is asleep. But instead, that clock turns, and all of a sudden this whole other world begins, right? It's like, so I think of sleep that way, like this entire process starts, all these processes that we don't experience, but that are just as active and just as important as our waking hours. So one of the things that happens when teenagers are sleeping is that, and this happens for all of us, but during the day, our brains are very active, and there's byproducts of that activity that build up. They're like toxins in the brain. They're waste products in our brain that are building up because our brains are so active. And there's a really cool plumbing system that washes away all those toxins, but it doesn't turn on until we fall asleep. So we go through our day building up these waste products and byproducts and toxins in our brain, and then we fall asleep, and this super amazing plumbing system, you can see it in brain scans, begins, and all those toxins are cleared out. And if you don't get enough sleep, I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? Because when you wake up after a terrible night's sleep, that's how you feel. I mean, I feel that way, so that's one of the things that's happening with teenagers waking up. They've essentially not cleaned out their brains, and they feel foggy. You know, it's really, they're kind of have that underwater feeling. So that doesn't feel good, you know, and that's part of what is going on with mental health, I think, and the connection between mental health and sleep, which is very strong. So there's so many other things that go on. Your memories get consolidated. Your memories bank gets cleared out into long-term memory so that you can learn again the next day. If you don't clear out those short-term memories during sleep, then you don't have the ability to learn as well the next day, and you're not forming strong memories. So academic function goes down, and there's a lot more that goes on with the emotional processing of the brain, but the connection, I mean, so many high schoolers, I think 1 in 3 at this point, are reporting a persistent feeling of sadness or hopelessness. and 40% of college students report that, a persistent feeling of sadness or hopelessness. And at the same time, they're the most sleep deprived generation in history. And those two things are absolutely connected.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. And as you were saying it, I reflected on conversations in my house, and I'm sure every parent has had these conversations. Okay, guys, it's time to go to bed. Like, you need to start thinking about going upstairs and starting the process, whatever that looks like for you, like washing your face, whatever, like, let's go. And then nobody listens to me for, an hour. And, I'm the one that's like, no electronics in the bedroom, and then they somehow find their way in there. And, it's a constant battle. It feels like, to just get your teen to go to bed, to just go to bed. Is it almost like a fear of missing out? Is that what it is?
Well, that's a big part of it, especially with today's, the amount of time teenagers spend connecting with friends on social media or checking in with what's going on social media, not wanting to miss anything. So that's a big part of it. I think that a lot of it is, that feeling of, at the end of the day, I've been at school, I've done my homework, I've done all these things. I do not want to go to sleep now. I want to have some fun. I want to relax and chill with my friends. And that's completely understandable. So I think it's a combination of things, but that desire to have some downtime, which we definitely don't want to take away from teenagers. We just want to reorganize their days so that they can get all that done earlier. But we also, as you know, we have a whole chapter in the book that's devoted to communicating with our teens with empathy, with the goal. I mean, it's something we want to do anyway, but specific goal regarding sleep is to help our teens start to feel self-motivated around sleep. Because as you well know, you're the parent of tweens and teens, there comes an age where us just telling them what to do is no longer effective. In fact, it's often met with more pushback. So the idea, and it's a process, but it's a worthwhile one, is to really start by being a good listener, letting your teenager know you understand them, whatever their issues are, whatever they're struggling with. And once you do that, you can look for openings to link things that they care about to sleep. And again, being really careful not to teach or tell them what to do, but to give them, ways of, talk about the information, talk about your own sleep, talk about what you've learned about sleep, and help them sort of become self-motivated, because that's really the key to them starting to take steps. It doesn't mean that you can't, do things in the home where you start to dim the lights, turn off your own devices, model good sleep for yourself. You can sort of work from the outside in a little bit, but we mostly really want to help them come on board. And you can do a sleep challenge too. Chapter 9 is a sleep challenge. And, if teens are up for a little competitiveness, they can, participate in a challenge with their friends or with the family or with their team or whatever. And if they can hang in there for 2 weeks and start to, change their habits and start to see how they feel. It's tricky because you don't want to ask them, oh, you've been sleeping more. Don't you feel better? You have to be very careful. It has to come to them. It has to be their idea.
Isn't that the truth? Okay, so what do we need for a good sleep? What do teens need for a good sleep? You talked about the bubble a bit.
Right. So the bubble is a great concept because it encompasses, there's a misunderstanding that we have about sleep, that it starts when we get into bed and it ends when we get out of bed. And that's not true. Sleep begins well before we get in bed, and it actually ends a little after that. So we create what we call the bubble, the sleep bubble, which encompasses like a padding or a buffer zone around sleep, because we need that in order to let our natural sleep mechanisms take over. And the bubble is created by 3 routines. There's so much to say about the chapter 6 is 5 habits of happy sleepers. So you really have to follow the 5 habits, but we can talk about a few of them. One is to create 3 routines: wind down, bedtime, and those are two on the bedtime side of the bubble, and then morning routine, which is in the morning. So you want to create 3 routines that have, the components that are important. Wind down is important to lower the lights and to go into a stress-free zone. So wind down time is 1 hour at least before bedtime. And stress-free zone means no, disturbing news, no social media, because that makes you feel activated and like I have to keep checking. It keeps you engaged. So we have a do and don't list for wind down time. And bedtime routine is just automated little practical steps that you take that help your brain trigger a Pavlovian response that you're about to fall asleep. So books and podcasts can be good and different things like that, washing your face, all that stuff. Morning routine, the most important thing is to go outside and to wake up within 1 to 2 hours of your regular wake up time on the weekend, which is that thing we talked about with social jet lag. So morning routine for teens is super important, that they get outside within an hour or 2 of their regular wake up time on the weekend, and before school that they get sunlight, because sun presses go on the internal clock. It makes a huge difference to our entire chemistry all day long, and it helps us fall asleep that night. So those 3 routines are really important to creating that bubble. And there are so many other things to say about sleeping in a super dark room. That's one thing that we know.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 159.
Uh-huh.
And they're all right here, right? Like there's so many great things. Like you have the wind down do's and the wind down don'ts, right? Eat a giant enchilada. That's not a good wind down thing. And it's so true, right? Because sometimes they like to eat in their room and they like to, and these are all great reminders even for adults.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
For adults, we say like one of the wind down
before I go to bed.
Yeah. One of my personal wind down don'ts is talking about anything financial. So don't talk to me about anything that has to do with finances for 1 hour. I know that about myself. So you kind of have to know yourself to know what your wind down don'ts are. So yeah, that's a really, really important one, because we have to let sleep take over, but it won't take over if we are feeling stressed and activated.
And Julie, I think that we have this idea. I love what you just said, Heather, about like, it doesn't start when you go to bed. It's like I can't say we as like a collective we, but I have been led to believe that you just go upstairs and you go to bed and then you will fall asleep. And that's a lot of pressure. It feels like, actually, when I think about it, that's a lot of pressure to expect that people will just go to bed and fall asleep, because most people don't go to bed and fall asleep. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, we all know people who do. I really dislike those people because I'm jealous. But most of us really do need time. I'm just joking. Most of us do need time for our bodies to release the sleepiness chemicals. The one we know best is melatonin, because we don't just say, oh, if we're getting in bed, the melatonin is going to come out. It takes time for our bodies to regulate down to sleep. One thing we haven't mentioned yet, and this is very tricky with teens, but for all of us, holding a regular bedtime is really just like Sleep 101, because our internal clocks do get trained. We can train our internal clocks, and if we put babies and toddlers and children and teens and all of us, if we go to bed at the same time, it's much easier to fall asleep because our bodies are busy getting ready for that time. But if, like Heather said, there's so much light and activation and stimulation and stress, we can push through that. So we don't want to push through that. We want to let it happen. But having that, you can call it like a prelude to sleep. And Matthew Walker, the eminent scientist who wrote Why We Sleep, which is a really seminal book for adults, he talks about preparing for sleep like landing a plane. You don't want to go like this. You want to just take that nice, smooth, gradual landing. So that's another way to think about it. We want to help our unique biology around sleep is very powerful. Like I said earlier, and it's hardwired. It's there for us, but we do have to respect it and give it the sort of environment that it needs to do its thing.
I love that. Okay, two more questions. When do we know that our teen needs help with sleep? When do we know to look for professional help?
I think if you have a suspicion that your teen is sleeping regularly under 8 hours a night and you can't break through with, normally we tell people to follow the 5 habits for at least 2 weeks before you worry about it. So if you do the sleep challenge in chapter 9, or you just, look at the 5 habits and you really make the changes, all 5 of them, and you create your sleep bubble and you're really consistent about it for 2 full weeks and you don't see any improvement, then I think that's a time to talk to your doctor about it, or a therapist who specializes in sleep. But most of the time when those 2 weeks are done, people are seeing improvements. And I also think it's good to look out for things like, your teen falling asleep easily in the morning when they're on the way to school. Like, you drive them to school and they can fall asleep in the car. Anytime they're basically not engaged on their phones, or, they're not, anytime they're not engaged and they're still, they fall asleep. And especially in the morning, because a lot of teens are really missing that morning sleep. So they're pulled to fall asleep very quickly in the morning if they're sleep deprived. So those are some signs to look out for. Yeah.
Okay, those are all really good tips. And I guess that, sleep aids would go into that conversation with a professional, right? That's not something is that something, Heather, that we should be deciding on our own? Take some melatonin or try this, whatever, sleeping aid or whatever.
Well, I definitely still think that falls under the category of do the 5 habits for 2 weeks and then consider it. But the thing about melatonin is that it's not regulated, and there's so many varying degrees. The dose of melatonin is totally not reliable. Melatonin is also not a sleep aid. It's a cue for the brain. It's a timing cue. So it helps with jet lag because of, time zone changes. But I don't really think that it's the best idea to go to for trying to fall asleep. Your body produces melatonin, but you have to get out of the way in order for it to do it. So that's where the 5 habits come in.
Okay, perfect. And Julie, you on page 8, we're right at the beginning. I love this. I loved reading this part. Sleep is your secret health weapon. That's what I want to end on. Tell me about sleep being your secret health weapon.
Yeah, I mean, we call it's like a magic pill because, we've talked today about how it helps with, cleaning out our brains and our memory and our emotional health. But there is a huge list, and Heather will fill in whatever I forget. But sleep improves our immune system. It helps our body regulate our weight. It helps our brains. This is also related to mental health. When we get enough sleep, our prefrontal cortex is more active, and that's the part of our brain that helps us think with reason, have perspective, see the world in a more positive, I can handle this, I can regulate my emotions kind of way. Getting enough sleep also improves our decision making. So car crashes and substance abuse go up when teens are sleep deprived. Heather, what am I leaving off the list?
I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Those sound like all good, very good reasons to sleep and not learn how to sleep, but set ourselves up for a good sleep, right? That's all we can do.
I know that's an important one.
That's how I have to retrain my brain. Oh,
the relationship, the tone in the house, the dynamic in the house changes, which I think for parents and teenagers is really like such a valuable shift in the tone of the house. It just lifts everybody's moods, and we can communicate better, and we enjoy each other more.
I love that. What a good place to end. I love this book. It's called Generation Sleepless. This is the book by Julie and Heather. Thank you so much for your time. I just want everyone to know that they can find you on your website, which is thehappysleeper.com, because that was your other book, The Happy Sleeper. And you were on Facebook and Instagram at The Happy Sleeper. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you for having us. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.